fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then do you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine and for weapons we make here in the United States, we give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan they put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is we trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're trying to say the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so that's 2 different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did Ben Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Let's get back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting old. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is the guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe. What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead, let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. What happens then? He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I make great trade deals with the European nations. Because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have. But we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia? At a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And I said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next month. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. The question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh no, it's my responsibility, I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of DC. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her, and she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go to Capitol Hill, number one. I sat that night in the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, he talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. He went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He didn't do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out, and now he says that he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that there will be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President. President Biden, President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that, they saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing, the Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon, this man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up on Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. And I asked them those first
that weren't punished for it.
The first time around. I said, well, you
And one person was
He
killed
said,
and
no,
she
I'll
was
tell them to stand
innocent.
by.
She was a
The
Trump
idea he's
supporter.
refusing to denounce these
Not the
guys.
other way around.
Denounce the people we're talking about now. Denounce the people
Ashley
who talk
Babbitt.
about Capitol. What are you gonna do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, and been convicted probably numerous other times. He should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion, you change the prosecutor, otherwise you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with his son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want
See, he
to
needs to answer to that. Joe Biden needs to answer, and now they're gonna skip over it because they're favoring Biden.
Is outrageous. It's simply a lie.
No, it's.
Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with. And think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night
What about your
when your wife
son?
was pregnant?
He was high and having
What are you
sex
talking
with
about?
porn stars
You're
and
using the
just
rules
prostitutes
of
off the street.
Give a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought he was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My phone numbers went up way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam, and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases around the world coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do.
They're all
I do
fabricated.
know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? You ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved around the first place after my son died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Actually, even that's a lie. I mean, how despicable that you lie about your own son and how he died. He acts like he's a war hero, that he died in Iraq. That's a lie. He died from, that was a medical
And she
condition.
asked him, they said,
How could
what
a
do
father
you think of those people?
lie about?
The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it,
that's
and the one he said, I
horrible
think
thing,
it's
but
fine.
did he really forget, or is he just lying? I mean,
Whatever said.
The scary thing is he believes his own lies. And when you got somebody who believes their own
the
lies,
Obama was the same way, because if they do it enough, they're,
This is a guy who says he's done some good things.
I think
and he's
they're
so impressionable,
He
he's
thinks
so
it was done, that's what he said.
gone
This guy has no
mentally out of
sense.
his mind. They can tell him
President Trump.
something, he's gonna
Jake,
believe,
both
because
of
he
you know that
doesn't
story's
remember
been totally
differently.
wiped out.
So they're
Because
putting
when you
all
see the
these
sentence, it
beliefs
said
into his head.
100% exoneration.
He don't
So he
even
just keeps
remember
it going. He
what
says he
the
ran
rules
because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. And he's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question, the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every anchor every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunk, it happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
well, actually, I'll have to admit, he's, what's the word, he's performing better than I thought he would, you know, where he's not slurring off as much, so I don't know what they pumped him up with, but it's like when he did the State of the Union address, even though he made it into an attack speech on Trump and had nothing on his record of the State of the Union, you know, but he in fact had more energy than anybody expected. Not that he said anything incredible, but, you know.
Yeah, well.
Everybody said he was pumped up on something, I don't know, energy drinks or some kind of medicine.
I mean, they say for this one, they're pumping them up with Ritalin to keep them focused.
I thought Ritalin had the opposite effect, like to calm down, like mainly used for children that are hyper, over hyper, like.
But, but doesn't it make them focus?
Maybe if they have ADD, they take it, cause it's weird, I never heard of Ritalin until this generation, like when I was growing up, we never heard of any of that
Well,
stuff.
that didn't exist.
Yeah.
It didn't exist because daydreaming wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah, cause I deal with a lot of 8th graders with, like part of the year for my job, and it's like, the first year I was doing this, which was like 30 years ago.
The investigation
It's
is a
like,
premeditated
make sure they're, the teacher knows that
twists
guy
and
took the
turns you
Ritalin,
never
I'm like,
thought
what is
possible
Ritalin?
when you
It's
see
like, I never
it.
even heard of it, it was crazy, cause the parents didn't wanna, they were too lazy to do the parenting, so they, let's just give them Ritalin to calm them down.
You know that the schools get a stipend for every kid that's on that medication.
Really?
Absolutely, that is why it is so rampant, because it has become a source of income for the school districts.
How do they get money out of it?
They
Or
get-
why do they get money out of it?
Because it comes federally to the state, and the state distributes it for every child that the nurse has to distribute.
Why? Just as an incentive, or, when it's medically not, they're harming them because they're getting them addicted, and then they're getting the parents addicted to not
yes.
having to do the
That's
parenting because
I
they're
think
giving them that
there's,
instead.
personally, I think there's a direct correlation
There's a lot of great
between
athletes come out of Jersey.
our kids being put on
Sometimes they
medication
get
when
over
they're
it
8,
because
9,
they don't
10
like
years
year-round.
old,
You
and
read
having
all
this
these guys in
medication
California, these guys in Texas,
affecting them
and kind of like,
their whole
okay,
entire
where am
life.
I at in
And
this?
then when they get out to being adults, I think it has a direct reason why we see so much mental illness in our young people that we have now. It's because they've been on a drug that affects them mentally the majority of their life now.
And all the,
And then when they get out as adults,
I'm Lester Holt with Savannah
20s
Guthrie.
and out
You're
of
watching
college,
the first
they don't
presidential
have,
debate
they
between
don't, they're not
President Joe
getting it.
Biden and former
That-
President
that
Donald
mental
Trump.
illness is
Being
set
hosted
in
by
already.
CNN at the
And now
conclusion
they
of
need
this debate in about 40 minutes.
to
We'll join
control.
us for
The
analysis
government
of
wants
tonight's
to
key moments.
control
Our team on political experts will
everybody.
break down how
Everybody.
to shake up the
And
presidential
that means
race over the
kids
next
too.
5 months. That's all ahead
So,
right here
you
on
know,
NBC.
this medication they put it on allows that to be done. They got the parents believing that, your kid is defective,
Georgia.
needs this
Let's
medicine.
talk about persistent challenges you
Yeah,
will
just like all
face
the,
in your first term,
And now we're,
and you certainly
Now
face
now
again
we're
in
2
the second term.
generations into
President
this,
Biden, while
drug
black
being given to
unemployment dropped
kids, and
to
so
a record
now they
low
got
under your
parents
presidency,
believing that
black
it's
families
hereditary.
still earn far less
I was
than
on
white families.
ADHD drugs.
Black mothers are
I'm
still
sure my
3
kids
times
need it
more
too.
likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and black
But
Americans
yeah,
are in
the
prison
school
at 5
districts get
times the
paid
rate
money
of white
for
Americans.
every kid.
What do you say to black
Every
families who are
single kid
disappointed
that
that you
is on
haven't made more
medication, they
progress?
get paid.
They acknowledge they made a lot of
that's as
progress.
bad as
number
the
one.
doctors.
Fact of
So,
the matter is that
wanting
more
people to
small
stay
black
on
businesses
meds, we
have
should
been
get
started in the
the
entertainment
kickback,
industry.
Sure,
Number
yeah,
two,
prescribe
the waste of black unemployment is the
certain-
lowest level it's been.
Or
a
the
brand of a drug,
Number
yeah,
three,
and
we're
get for
trying
free
to
vacation.
find housing for black Americans
Pharmaceutical.
and dealing with
Oh,
the segregation that exists among these corporate organizations that are coming to keep black people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce black childcare costs, I cut them in half. We gotta make sure we provide for childcare costs. We gotta make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting them that they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family, first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home, so they can get started. I made sure
Right.
we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who provided, who had to take out student loans that were ballooning. They were in grandkids and nursing, anything having to do with volunteerism. If they paid their bills for 10 years and their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions
If I were a
have
black
paid for
person,
that.
I'd be
And
insulted by
we're
that.
doing a lot more for black families.
Act like,
Thank
oh,
you,
they're
President
different,
And
you
he
know, we should
caused
do different
inflation.
things.
He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused
Well,
the
it's smart,
inflation, and
he's
it's
not,
killing
you know,
black
that is
families
why-
and Hispanic families and just about everybody.
I feel like
It's
why
killing
we're losing
people.
the
They
black
can't
vote,
buy
because
groceries
the
anymore.
black
They
community has
can't,
gotten
you
so
look at
much
the
more
cost of food
educated.
where it's doubled and tripled and
And now they
quadrupled.
realize
They can't
That
live,
they've been
they're not
taken
living
advantage of
anymore.
by the Democrat
He
Party,
caused
because
this
they never
inflation.
deliver
I
on
gave
what they
him
promised.
a country with
There's
no,
just been a
essentially
bunch of
no
lies to
inflation.
get
It
them
was
to vote
perfect.
for
It was so
him.
good that he didn't use
Even
any
after
oil.
Obama
He
was in
destroyed
office,
it
the
with
black
this
people were
Green
no
New
better
Scam
off
and all of the other,
after
all
all
this
those
money that's being
promises he
thrown out
made.
the window. He
And
caused
now they move all the
inflation.
illegal
As
stuff
sure as
around
you're
the line.
sitting there,
Don't
the
even
fact
remind
is
me.
that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're gonna see something that's gonna be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 50% unemployment. He decimated
That's a
the economy. Absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was
That's a
no
lie.
inflation at the time. There were no
COVID
jobs.
numbers. That ain't
Provided
fair.
thousands
That's
of
just-
Well,
millions of
thank
jobs
God,
for individuals.
you know, Trump
in
said
rural
it, he
communities,
said,
including minority
you know,
communities.
these so-called
We made sure
jobs
they
that
had health
Biden is
insurance.
creating
We have covered
are
with
just
the
jobs that
ACA
are
has
coming
increased
back
to
after
make sure that
COVID that
the
were dormant
I mean,
$8,000 per person in the
yes.
family to get written off
So
for
like,
healthcare.
he can't
This
claim
guy
that
wants
he,
to eliminate that.
We're
They
not
tried
that
50
stupid.
times. He wants to get rid
A
of the
lot of us are
ACA again.
stupid, but
And they're gonna
we
try
ain't
again if they win. You find ourselves
we
in a
might be
position
poorer
where-
under Biden. That's what Joe,
I
what's his
put
name,
more-
Kennedy,
put more
the
police on
senator,
the
I like
street
him, he's so
than any
funny.
administration has. He wants to
And
cut the
John
costs.
Kennedy
and provide for
is always
equity,
saying, well,
equity, making sure
the American
people
people
don't
may be
shop
more
to
poor
make it.
under
There's a lot
Biden, but they're
going
not
on.
stupid.
And inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary.
And they
are
remember
blacks.
his
And
comment,
that's
oh, well,
why
you're not really
we
black,
have the
you
best
voted
numbers
for Trump.
in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of
I wish
people
he had
pouring
written out
into our
the
country, and they're gonna
statement
take the
that Biden
jobs,
made when
and
he
it's
was a
already
senator years
started,
ago,
and you haven't
when
seen
his kids
anything
were
yet.
young.
It's a
You remember
disaster.
that? He said,
38 seconds
same
left.
thing he
President
claims
Trump, will you
he's
take any
accused
action
Trump of,
as
he did
president
himself.
to
He
slow the
made the
climate
statement
crisis?
when his
So
kids
I
were
want
young in school.
absolutely
Well, I don't want my
clean
kids
water,
going
and I want
to
absolutely clean
school in
air,
a
and
racial
we had it.
jungle. That's
We had
exactly what he
H2O,
said.
we
In
had
other
the
words,
best
one still
numbers
wants
ever.
segregation.
And we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. And I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $50 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something to have the cleanest water, he had done a damn thing in the environment. He, out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord, I immediately joined it because it could reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point. There's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money, nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because is coming in. They want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to, the United States can't get us under control? One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We've made significant progress, and we continue to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people who learn how to deal with this Peace Corps, and we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements that cause the pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, that one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And
No,
then
he
you
just
see,
wants to
as I
protect
said,
the
you're in a
illegals.
circumstance where
I think I can
400,000
better
people,
invest that
40
money
40 million
through
people
my course
would
of
not have insurance
life
because they
and
have
have a bigger
pre-existing
return
condition.
than what
Well,
I'm not
allows
gonna
them to
get
have
from
that
It was
security.
such
Is
common
the fact
sense. I
that
mean,
they, in
it's
fact,
like
are
water
part
under
of
the
the
bridge
East
now,
End.
but when they set
And
it
by
up,
the way, the other
all
thing
they
is,
had to do
we're in a
was
situation
put
where we
each
talk about education
person's,
for black communities.
you
I've
know,
raised
Social
the
Security
number, the
payment
amount
in
of
a
money for
separate
Pell
account
Grants, another
and let it
$8,000.
draw
So now you're
interest,
making
and the government
$70,000 a year.
could
You
actually
do what?
use that interest,
$15,000
but
toward
not
your
the
tuition.
principal,
It's,
so it would still
he just
be
doesn't
waiting for
understand
that
it.
person.
Thank you,
When
President Biden.
they
President
submit, it
Trump.
would benefit
So I
both,
deal
and they
with
wouldn't run out of money.
politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. And everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security, they're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid, they're putting them in our hospitals, they're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of.
They're not.
By the way, when I said suckers and losers, he said, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're gonna be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world. The reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession. And inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI during the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border, that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He's the worst president. He just said it about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think, we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. we probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He's the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We're the finest military in the history of the world. The finest in the history of the world.
Before they made it woke.
No one wants to school America. Nobody. Number one. Number two, the idea that we were talking about the worst presidents. I wasn't joking.
America
Look
was
it up,
started
go
in
online.
1619
159
for the purpose of slavery. That's the whole reason.
Presidential historians, they had meetings and they voted who was the worst president in American history, one from best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care. He did very virtually nothing with child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability.
They said the reason the Republican Party was founded in the first place was to help do away with slavery. And it was the Democrats who supported
President Trump, the question was
KKK,
about what would you do to make
not the
healthcare more affordable
Republicans.
if
And
you
Just
went to
so you understand,
had never ever
we have
owned
Paulie, we
slaves,
have
but
other
because by the
things
time
that
slavery
they rate him the
ended,
worst.
that's when the
Because what he's
Republican
done
Party
is so
was
bad.
founded by
And they rate me, I'll
President
show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay?
They never
And
bring that up.
if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I grow up and I see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I never raised the tax on anybody who makes less than $400,000. I didn't. But his tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more, because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that we're importing. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. The middle class has been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country.
Quit
The lowest deficit of any president in American
funding
history.
the illegals,
Number
and
two,
that'll solve,
you have
it's a
not, in
pretty
fact,
common sense
made
way
any contact, any
solve
any
part of the
progress
problem.
with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden.
You lost.
Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other
Well,
opioids.
they also
What will you
talk
do to
about
help Americans right now
slavery was
in the
just as
throes of
prevalent in the
addiction
North.
who are struggling to get the
They
treatment
may
they
have
need?
ended it sooner,
To finish
but
up,
they still had it.
we now have
Act
the
like it
largest
was never-
deficit
never
in the history of our
existed
country
anymore.
under this
They
guy.
only talk about
We have the
themselves.
largest deficit with China.
Well,
He gets paid
Like,
by China. He's a
okay.
Manchurian candidate. He
John
gets money from
Brown,
China.
not the
We have, so I think he's
abolitionist John
afraid to
Brown,
do
but
with
John
them
Brown
something.
affiliated with
But
Brown
you notice he never
University.
took out
He
my
and Taylor
tariffs
were
because we
huge
bring in so
slaveholders.
much money with the
They were
tariffs that
from
I
Rhode
imposed on
Island.
China. He never
So,
took them away. He
you
can't
know,
because it's too
And
much
did you
money.
know
It's tremendous. I was saying our
Kamala's,
steel industries, and there was more to
ancestors
come, but he
had
hasn't done that.
slaves in
But he
Jamaica?
hasn't
She's
cut
not
the
from
tariffs
Africa,
because
she
he
is
can't,
half
because it's too
Jamaican,
much
half
money.
Indian.
But he's got the largest
And her
deficit
ancestors
in the
in
history
Jamaica
of our country,
on
and
a
he's got the worst
plantation on
we
slaves.
have the worst
So talk about a
situation with China.
hypocrite.
China's gonna own us if you keep allowing
We used to
them
marry
to do what they're doing to us as a
females
country.
when they were
They are
14,
killing us as a country, Joe,
13,
and you
14
can't
years
let that
old
happen.
and
You're
pioneer
destroying our
days.
country.
But
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well in addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough, and it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, and numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl. These big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. He never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say there's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter. I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly, as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said, by literally, as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your 2nd term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
It's not tough for
Well,
him,
first
it's
of
supposed
all,
to be.
I've been
He
half
doesn't have any conscience or
being
anything.
criticized
Well,
being
you
the
know,
youngest
Obama said I'd
person
run for the
in
3rd term
politics.
if I
I'm
had
the
a year.
2nd youngest person.
He is in his
ever
3rd
lived in the United
term.
States
He's
Senate.
calling off
And now I'm the
his-
oldest. This guy's
Not
still
Obama
all
3.0.
this company. I think that just look at the record, look at what I've done, look how I've turned around the horrible situation.
Show us one
in
thing
India.
you've done.
As I said, 50 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips reached that 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because they were sending people
Even these electric cars that they're touting has a battery that is made in China, can only be made in China, and it's non-biodegradable.
Here in the United States, and guess what? Those fabs they call them, to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. They need to cause a roof for it, and those billions. About $40 billion already being
And it
invested
doesn't solve
and
the
built
problem.
right
It's
now
not
in the
near
United
enough
States, creating significant jobs for Americans all over from all
What
over
about
the world.
what about
President
the
Biden, you have 40
the
seconds
green
left. Would
energy
you like to add
industry not
anything?
having to
Yeah,
be
well,
bonded
the
like
idea
the fossil
that
fuel
somehow
industry is?
we We are
You know,
this failing
they
country.
chose put up a
I've
window,
never heard a president talk like this before.
and
Apparently.
when it quits working, they can just
Apparently-
walk away from it.
Yeah, and they need maintenance, just like we live in any mechanical, but apparently there's a part in there that's not biodegradable, and they just patch them, and then that part in there is not.
Yeah, they just dig a hole and put because it's all fiberglass, so big
And
windmills.
everybody trusts us, all of our allies.
Well, and I didn't know
And our-
this
and our-
until
those who he calls up to from
they started
Kim
talking about
Jong-un,
that,
sent
because
them
I'm
all
not a
those to
biologist or a
et cetera.
chemist,
They don't
but
want us
apparently you
to
have
run this.
to have,
Thank you.
Fossil
Former President
fuels,
Trump, to follow up,
to
you will be
run,
at
to
the
make
end of your
electricity
second
in the
term.
first place, so
What do
you
you say
can't
to
run,
those
so
who
this
are
argument that, oh,
concerned
we're gonna
about
do
your
away with
capabilities
fossil
to serve?
fuels, you can't
Well, I
even,
took two
even if
tests,
you
I
wanted
did
to,
a
which
test,
is
I aced
totally,
them.
they
Both
didn't do
of them,
their
as you know,
homework, or don't
we
tell
made
the
it public.
American
Each of
public
them,
half
I'd like
the
to see
facts
take one,
about.
just one.
And now all the people
Like
who
for
have
the first
electric
5 questions,
vehicles
you
are
couldn't do it.
furious, because they were
But I
sold
took
a
two
bill of
cognitive
goods,
tests. I
and they're
took
horribly
physical exams
inconvenient, and
every
they're
year.
not cheap, they're
And, you know,
expensive
we're not
to
gonna
charge,
live
all
wherever
kind
we
of
may have
problems,
lived.
and they're taking
Yeah,
them back
I'd
to
be
the
very
dealers,
good.
and
I
the
just
dealers
won
are
two
like,
club
you sold me
championships,
a
not
bill
even
of
senior.
goods, you know?
Two regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test, and you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor, and then I took another one, a similar one, and one of them said they've never seen anybody ace them.
Thank you. President Biden.
Wind's not blowing.
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
I know you could.
He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap, 8, but I had,
I've seen this way, I know this way.
Okay,
Let's not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
Let's not act like children.
You
to
are
a
a child.
specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something.
What's Fabulous Nick doing?
I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great
He
again.
hates hearing that.
We're a failing nation right
Hearing
now. We're a seriously
MAGA.
failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North
Hopefully that
Korea,
means
all
that,
of these, Putin,
that
they
his
don't
election
respect
will be
him,
his
they don't
funeral,
fear
the fact
him,
that he's
they have
swearing.
nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going
I
to
know,
drive us
it's
into
terrible.
World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want.
Jackson Leak and Lion
Just
stick
do
together
Article
in
5. an attack on one is an attack on all on the part of response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation, we are wonderful, it's because of the people, not me, it's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a
Title
war,
is
just
President
like
of the
Putin, go
United
ahead and
States, not
take
President
Kyiv,
of the world.
make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary,
Take care of
and
your
other
own
places
people
going afterwards.
first.
Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia. Because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked.
President Trump, the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there was all this misrepresentation or stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea if you lose again, you accept anything, you can't stand loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
A new tribe is forming.
I'm surprised there weren't more people here tonight.
So always say stay positive, test negative. See y'all soon.
CBS original Survivor. All episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus.
From hot beignets in the French Quarter to ice-cold sake in the wetlands, we're cooking up a new season of delicious Louisiana dishes. Welcome back to Emerald Cooks.
Let's get started. Yeah, Woo! I like it spicy.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Just a little taste of heaven. This is Gusto TV.
$1 million!
These are big, pressing decisions. Deal or no deal.
Here's to the legends of the game who paved the way for the stars of today. Get out of his way! Origin Sports showcases sports history that is as relevant today as it was in the past. Origin Sports, run it back.
The Roku experience you love is in the palm of your hand. Ready to dive back in? It's easy to continue watching what you love and pick up right where you left off. Staying connected to the entertainment you love is always a tap away. Download the Roku mobile app today.
Israeli military headquarters.
Now he's raw.
This tunnel just goes on and on.
Now he's real.
We get to see democracy in action for the very first time in the 2024 race.
Now he's constant. The future is now. News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
I'm Lester Holt with Savannah Guthrie. You're watching the first presidential debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump.
It's being hosted by CNN, and at the conclusion of this debate in less than 10 minutes or so, we're hoping you'll join us for analysis of tonight's key moments.
Our team of political experts will break down how this night could shake up the presidential race over the next 5 months. Back to Atlanta now.
Candidates to deliver their closing statements as predetermined by a coin toss. We're going to begin with you, President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
We have made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We found ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I asked anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said, nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he found himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on the United States of America. What I did, well, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior, all along what's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits that people have for child care. We're going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do, all he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel, it was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get, when you're terminally ill, now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document, they've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
So we've been watching the wrap-up there of the debate. Former President Trump making his closing statement, wrapping up the first presidential debate hosted by CNN, with Mr. Trump facing off against President Biden.
The two men debated for about an hour and 40 minutes or so and clashed repeatedly on the major topics of the day, including economy, abortion, immigration, child care, Social Security, and of course, the key issue, the competence of both men, both one of the oldest presidents in history if elected.
The candidates also traded several personal attacks. We heard about golf scores, among other things. It was a very, very contentious debate. Let's bring in Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker, and in the debate spin room, senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson. And Kristen, let me begin with you. What are the headlines being written right now about this debate?
Well, Lester and Savannah, there's no way to sugarcoat this. This night got off to a tough start for President Biden. He delivered a performance that was at times halting, at times he seemed to lose his train of thought, at times he started to talk about one topic, for example, the economy, and then shifted to Afghanistan, which gave former President Trump an opening. And the topic of abortion, his strongest topic coming into tonight, he raised the issue of immigration, which gave former President Trump an opening. As the night progressed, he did begin to pick up steam. He had some really strong moments on the issues of what his administration, for example, has done for veterans. But zooming out, this was a debate about performance. This was a debate about allaying Americans' concerns about his ability to serve another 4 years. And I and a number of reporters at NBC News have heard from a range of Democrats who have said that they are concerned by tonight's debate. One telling me of this race, quote, "This is effectively over." This person predicting, look, Democrats are still going to stand by Biden, despite the fact that you do have some Democrats tonight wondering if that will be the case moving forward. But there has been some tough language that people have been reaching out to offer in terms of the performance that they saw tonight from President Biden. It is also important to note, former President Trump unleashed a torrent at times of misinformation, some of which President Biden fact-checked, some of which went unanswered. You have to wonder if the format of this debate, the fact that the mics were muted, may have played a role in this, but again, a slow start to this debate for President Biden. He did pick up steam. We'll have to see how people play it.
Let's go to Hallie Jackson, who's in his spin room down in Atlanta. And I mean, here's a race that in some ways was essentially tied, perhaps, at Donald Trump in most of the national polls and swing state polls going into it, had a lead in most of them. The Biden campaign wanted and needed a compelling performance from their candidate. Did they get it?
If a voter, Savannah, was tuning in, looking to see about concerns being alleviated about President Biden's age or strength or capability for office, it is not at all clear that that is what they got from this performance by President Biden tonight, which was shaky. It was a shaky start, wooden at times, meandering at times. I will tell you that in about the back half of the debate, maybe the latter third of the debate, I heard from a Democratic lawmaker, a member of Congress who has been a strong supporter of President Biden, who suggested the possibility, Savannah, of perhaps an open convention or replacing President Biden on the ticket. I will tell you it is all but potentially impossible for that to actually happen, but the fact that that is even being raised, the fact that that is even a shadow now hanging over the debate performance for President Biden is at minimum a headache for the Biden campaign moving into the next stretch of this campaign ahead of the Republican convention in the next couple weeks, and at worst, potentially something that will dog them now for months, given what we have seen from voters in polling consistently, which is, yes, concern about President Biden's age. Now, all of that said, I'm in the spin room, and they call it the spin room a reason for a reason, Savannah. It is because you have surrogates here for both campaigns, and of course the Biden campaign out here trying to make the case that their candidates did well. And I will tell you what some of the early spin is now from Team Biden, suggesting that former President Trump's answer, for example, on January 6th was not a good one, that people are turned off by his insults, by his attacks on President Biden here. But remember the sort of social economy that we're in right now, Savannah and Lester, this idea that these sort of clippable, shareable moments are what people tend to see if they're not watching tonight, then perhaps the next day or the day after. And there are some moments here that the Biden campaign is going to find tough to swallow based on the president's performance tonight.
Yeah, well, speaking of the spin room and surrogates, we want to do that right now and go to Biden campaign national co-chair, former Mayor Mitch Landrieu. And Mr. Mayor, I mean, let's just put a fine point on it. Was this the commanding performance from your candidate you hoped to see?
Well, I thought it was a really bare knuckles brawl. I think they're right, the president started off slow, but then he came back. But the most compelling thing about tonight, that you were right about more than you're right about anything else, is that when Donald Trump was speaking, he was lying. And the fact that there was no fact checking is incredible. It's really hard to debate somebody who is untethered from the truth. He doubled down on the fact that January 6th really wasn't a big deal. He doubled down on the fact that he thought those folks were patriots. He doubled down on the fact that he was an election denier. He doubled down on the fact that he thought reversing Roe versus Wade was a great idea. He doubled down on the fact that the economy was the best in the world when in fact it was not. And so these debates have a way of coursing over time. But before tomorrow morning, when you fact check what was said, you are going to find out that almost everything that Donald Trump said tonight was a fabricated lie. The fact that you fact check him in time is difficult.
But Mr. Mayor, will that be the conversation, or will the conversation be about the physical performance?
I think because of the way people analyze debates, it's going to be at first about the physical performance. But when you get into the substance of what was said, I think the takeaway from this was that Joe Biden was right on the substance. He told the truth. He has a better record. America is stronger. People respect us more. The economy is better. And Donald Trump literally, to every question that was asked of him, he did not tell the truth. It was like he was living in another universe. But if you can't fact check somebody, and somebody isn't ashamed of not telling the truth, it is a very difficult situation. And I thought you saw that in real time tonight. But what you also did see was President Biden actually fighting for the people that really he believes in, and Donald Trump becoming obsessed again with himself and almost being unhinged in some moments.
Mr. Mayor, you talk about fact checks. One of the key issues in this campaign, and the polls show it over and over again, a core issue for voters is whether or not President Biden has the competence and ability to complete a second term. So the fact check is before their eyes. They're able to assess it. Was the President Biden that you saw tonight the individual you know? So if people assess based on what they saw tonight, that this is the president who will serve another 4 years, are you comfortable with that assessment based on what you saw tonight?
I am. I served with President Biden for 2 years. I was with him on a regular basis, and I've seen him recently. I think that he's fine. I think he had a cold tonight. I think he looked a little sluggish when he came out, but as the night went on, I think he really kind of rose to the occasion. It's going to be a very, very difficult night. It was a bare knuckles brawl, but I'm proud of the fact that he stood up to Donald Trump and the mistruths that he told, and he tried to lay his plan out for the American people.
All right, Mitch Landrieu, Biden campaign co-chair, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Our senior national correspondent, Tom Yamas, is on the floor of the spin room. Tom, what are you hearing?
Hey, Savannah, good to be with you tonight. So listen, campaigns, elections, they are all about strategies. The Biden campaign strategy in the spin room is a little odd right now. All these people are waiting for any Democratic strategist to come out, anyone from the Biden campaign, anyone who supports Joe Biden to come out here and defend his performance. Right now, you can see there are not a lot of people here. To be fair, they've chosen a different space from what we understand. They're going to have surrogates there as well. But if I turn the camera around the spin room, all these people here, these people are talking to Trump supporters. These are Trump surrogates that are out here, right? People like Vivek Ramaswamy, people like Representative Stefanik. We saw Senator Rubio enter the room as well. Essentially, the point I'm trying to make is that the Trump team is out here on the offense. They're out here saying basically that President Biden had a very bad debate, that President Trump, obviously the candidate they're supporting, had a much better debate, and that the decision now is clear, right? That if the American viewers, the voters saw the performance from President Biden, the choice is clear. Again, I'm sure in the moments to come, President Biden will be out. Somebody from his team will come out here and defend the president's performance. But right now,
are they trying to close up?
And there's dozens of them
There's still
waiting
some
for anyone to come out right
What
now
y'all think?
from the Biden campaign. And
What
look,
do you
this
think?
is the spin room. So even though they have a different room that they want to put their
What?
people in,
I don't think it's
as
gonna
far as
change anything at all.
strategy goes, as far as where the reporters
Yeah, I
are,
don't think
this is
so.
where everyone
I
is
will
right
say,
now.
I
And
hate
again,
to
all
even
these
give
piles of
credit
people,
to
you
it,
see
but
here, all these reporters,
Biden
these
didn't
cameras,
perform
they're
as
surrounded
badly
Trump
as I
surrogates. You
thought,
can see the
you know,
signs
because
of
they
that.
had
the
it
problem.
pumped up on
Is
some.
you set the expectations so low.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can tell that he's not all there, but
Oh, he's
when
still
it's
lying and
so low.
still, you know, but he didn't drift off as much as, but he would change the subject midstream, you know, go off on all these tangents.
We'll see what happens.
Thank you for being with us. Lester, great to be with you. We heard from the surrogate for the Biden campaign that President Trump, in their view, flooded the zone with untruths, half-truths, truths. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think my reaction is that President Trump had a very strong performance that I think America saw. If they saw the challenges that Joe Biden had just delivering a message, and he didn't have an answer on inflation, he didn't have an answer on the border, and I think that's what the Americans I talk to, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, those are the two things that are affecting them most. The border isn't about immigration, it's about national security and public safety. And we didn't hear answers to that. And I think that me as a business guy listening to it, it's clear that, you know, Joe Biden's got a 50-year-long philosophy, which is essentially anti-business. Right now, of course, American economy buried in regulation. He wants to raise taxes, and every solution is higher taxes and more spending. And so I think that, you know, people didn't see anything new. There was no vision there, and people know that they were better off under President Trump. And so I think tonight, big win for President Trump.
And Governor, on style points, the fact that there was no audience, do you think that in the end helped the former president?
Well, I think that President Trump showed what he shows a lot of people, which is whether he's in small groups or whether he's at fundraisers. I mean, he's right now, he's in a great spot. He's calm, he's strong, he's confident. I mean, this is not the guy that was running in 2016. He knows what it's like to be president. He's done it before. He's surrounded himself by a great campaign team. And I think he's very confident about how he's going forward. I think that showed in his performance tonight.
Governor, can I ask you something? A lot of folks are just tuning in, really paying attention. They're not political junkies like you or I may be, and they're just tuning in right now. And one of the last things they remember, of course, is January 6th, the president losing the election, but claiming he didn't, people rioting at the Capitol. Here he was again tonight, asked point blank, if you lose the election, will you concede? And he just doesn't answer the question directly. He's always hedging it with if it's free and fair. And of course, the implication is it's not free and fair if he's not the winner. Why doesn't he just come right out and say, of course I'll accept the results of this election?
Well, I think you heard him say that at the end. It would be easier for him if everybody thought we had secure elections, but we know in our country, being a democracy, this is a challenge.
Yeah, but that's kind of like, that's just a red herring. So he got to litigate it. He had the advantages of our democracy and our courts and every other institution, which found that it was a free and fair election, and yet he's still on about that. And he won't say that he'll accept the results of this election. I just don't get that.
Well, I think for any of us that were around, and I was also part of that 2020 election, we had a free and fair election in North Dakota. We've got election security there, but
We had so many rule changes in 2020 with COVID. We had record number of mail out, not mail in ballots, but mailing out, flooding the zone with all of these ballots to non-updated voter files. Unmonitored drop boxes. I mean, you can verify that this is the number of ballots that got counted, but I'm a guy that spent my life in tech and in business processes, and when you've got unmonitored documents that don't have any control over the path of that document, you don't know where it came from, you don't know where it's been, that would never pass any kind of audit from a quarterly audit from a public company. So I think we all want the same thing, and again, if America, whether it's the 2000 election, which was challenged, down in one county in Florida, the 2016 election, which people claimed there's Russian interference, the 2020 election. I mean, 3 of our last 5 elections, either of the different parties have been saying there was concerns. It would be fantastic.
We can't let you get out of here without asking a question about the VP selection process. What are you hearing? Obviously, your name is one of the top 3.
Well, have you been asked to be VP? Because the former president says his VP was there tonight. You're there, Marco Rubio's there, J.D. Vance is there. Have you been asked to be VP?
There's so much talent in the Republican Party here tonight. I think the real deep question has got to be on the Democrat side. I'm sure that's the question right now is the choice that Joe Biden made 4 years ago. And what are they doing going forward?
Do you expect to know who his vice presidential pick is this week? Keeping in mind it's Thursday night.
Tonight is about President Trump's big victory, and he'll make that decision.
Have you been asked?
He'll make a good one. He'll make it at the time of his choosing.
Have you been asked?
There's only one person to know who's the next VP is, and that is President Trump.
Governor, that question would go. Governor, thank
I think that's a no. He hasn't been asked. All right, Governor, thank you.
NBC's Gary Schwartz has been watching the debate with voters known as double haters in Phoenix. Those are voters who don't like either candidate. Gotti, what are you hearing?
Hey, Lester, we started off the night talking about double haters. As that debate went on, double hate, it's probably not the word that this panel would use to describe their feelings on one or possibly both candidates. I mean, we were just talking about it. How would you describe this? Double what?
Double frustrated.
Double frustrated. How about you? Double cringe. Double cringe. And I was watching you as you were watching this debate. I saw a lot of cringing. I saw a lot of anger at sometimes. If there was one moment that stuck out to you, what would it be?
When we started to go back and forth about golfing.
Golfing towards the end.
Question the moderator asked, and they just kept going back and forth, and it was just like, is this real? Like, it just felt really weird to see them going back and forth like that.
And Denise, how about you? What was a moment that stuck out to you?
Well, first, if I could just finish, he did this a lot. I would like to say we are not in one of Donald Trump's many properties. We are in heat-filled Phoenix, Arizona, where we are suffering from climate change. So to say that there's no problem with our climate is yet another lie, because there were so many lies told today. But a cringe moment was just, I felt like they were in first grade, second grade. Nothing is Donald Trump's fault. It's all the Democratic judges that Biden put into office. Nothing is Joe Biden's fault either. It's all, I had to clean up your mess. So figure it out, boys, because you're both wrong.
And Nicole, when it comes to, I mean, I saw you cringing a few times during Biden's speaking. What were your thoughts when you were watching that?
I mean, he just really struggles to get out a coherent thought. And then he gets sidetracked and he can't get back onto the conversation. It's really challenging to watch him.
And this is one of those debate watch parties where 3 of you said that you wouldn't have made it past maybe 3 or 4 questions. You would have turned it off. Very insightful, coming from Phoenix, Arizona.
People still sorting out their feelings about what they saw tonight. Gotti, thanks. We have much more coverage of the first presidential debate right after this.
Oh, I think I'm gonna head out.
The weekend racing is over.
What is your name?
Or is it?
Christina. I'm April.
Racing on the network, which never leaves the track. Enjoy grassroots racing from America's most iconic tracks every Monday night only on Mass TV Select.
Give me that.
Asia Central is the place to get your fast, fun, and sometimes frenzied fix of trivia, teamwork, and triumphs. And it's all streaming free.
All good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I know y'all were trying to close up.